Welcome to the House of Hypertrophy. In this video, we're discussing some misconceptions in the muscle and strength building realm that aren't frequently discussed. Precisely, we're touching on strength versus size, progressive overload, and how stiff lifting weights may make you. Some suggest getting stronger directly causes you to get bigger. A couple of studies on high-level powerlifters find very strong correlations between lean mass and strength on the bench press, squat, and deadlift. Therefore, some may use this data to suggest getting strong clearly causes muscle hypertrophy. However, I believe this is the wrong way around. Instead, getting bigger causes you to get stronger. You see, muscle hypertrophy is largely achieved by increasing the number of force-generating units muscle fibers have, and this can directly increase in muscle strength. So it's more accurate to say getting bigger causes you to get stronger, not the other way around. If it was the other way around, you'd expect lifting the heaviest load you can for a single rep multiple times per week to be effective at building muscle. This is called training with your 1 rep max. However, we have 3 studies that find although 1 rep max training was highly effective for producing strength gains, it produced virtually no hypertrophy whatsoever. I plan to have more videos on strength versus size, and there are many complexities and controversies. For now, know my thoughts are that on an individual level, the strongest version of yourself will likely require you to be near the most muscularly developed version of yourself. Again, I'll have more in-depth videos in the future dissecting why I believe the literature indicates this, despite various areas of complexities and controversies. Typically, people progressive overload their training sessions by lifting heavier or performing more repetitions. Some suggest progressive overload causes muscle and strength gains. Strictly speaking, this isn't wrong, but it is somewhat deceptive. If you purely believed progressive overload caused muscle and strength gains, this may lead to 2 mistakes. The first is you always try to force progressive overload. Unintentionally, you may compromise your form to lift heavier or perform more repetitions. The second is you may always try to select exercises that are easier to progressive overload long term. This isn't inherently bad, but assuming exercises that are easier to progressive overload are superior for muscle hypertrophy isn't always correct. I'll have an example in a second. What most people tend to miss is that your ability to progressive overload is caused by your muscle and strength gains. But by you applying progressive overload thanks to your muscle and strength gains, you have maintained a high-quality training stimulus that will continue to stimulate muscle and strength gains. So in this sense, the idea progressive overload causes muscle and strength gains is correct. As shown on screen, thinking of progressive overload as a cycle is probably a great way to think of it. So yes, progressive overload can cause gains, but your progressive overloading is also because of your gains. Now, I mentioned that for hypertrophy specifically, selecting exercises that are easier to progressive overload with the belief they build more muscle isn't correct. For example, this 2022 Japanese study compared overhead extensions to pushdowns, and subjects progressively overloaded the pushdowns to a larger extent, yet triceps hypertrophy was superior with the overhead extensions. Why is this? Due to various biomechanical factors, certain exercises allow you to lift heavier loads, and so have a greater capacity to be progressively overloaded long term. Yet, these biomechanical factors that enable you to lift heavier loads on an exercise do not always mean that the muscles involved in the exercise are receiving a greater muscle building stimulus. I'm working on a series of 3 ultimate guide videos to developing each muscle group, and these will provide insights into what exercises may be the most favorable for each muscle. The biceps are the first muscle we'll examine, and that will be released the week after the next. It can be common to assume lifting weights leads to your muscles being stiffer and less flexible, but the evidence fails to support this. A 2021 meta-analysis out of Portugal combined the results of 11 studies and found no significant difference in joint range of motion gains between lifting weights and stretching. Most of the 11 studies had the subjects lift full range of motion, while 2 of them actually used a partial range of motion at long muscle lengths, while the stretching training was largely static. It's also worth noting that 11 studies in the meta-analysis were quite different from each other. So I don't believe this meta-analysis is definitive evidence lifting weights is always as good as dedicated stretching training for increasing joint range of motion. But at the very least, it certainly qualifies as evidence lifting weights does not make you stiff. In fact, when lifting through a full range of motion, or even a partial range of motion at long muscle lengths, numerous studies find it can increase the length of your muscle fibers, presumably conferring flexibility benefits. Consistent training is crucial for long-term gains, and Alpha Progression is a really well-designed app that can help. The app enables you to visually track your lifting long-term progression, which is great for motivation. You can input your own program, or even explore their incredibly flexible custom workout generator. Specify your training experience, what equipment you have, your training goals, whether you want to focus or neglect certain muscles, and how often you want to train and for how long. The app also contains a database of over 550 exercises with great text and video tutorials on each. By using the link in the comments and description, you'll have 2 weeks free of all its features plus 20% off a subscription. If you do purchase the app, the House of Hypertrophy will get 50%, so this truly helps support these free videos. Thank you so much. Finally, I have a free ultimate guide to bench pressing ebook that covers these areas. Feel free to get it in the link in the comments and description.